All right, well, welcome everyone to the September Mount Diablo Audubon Society meeting. Thank you for your flexibility. We were planning to do this meeting in person at our previous location, the garden at Heather Farm, but they are still in the middle of the renovation project. So the room is not ready and it will not be ready either for October. So we'll be doing Zoom again next month, but welcome. Nice to see you all after the summer break. My name is Ariana Rickard. I'm the Vice President of Mount Diablo Audubon. We got an exciting program for you tonight. We've got an author of a very cool novel to share with us. But before we go into that, just a reminder about your settings on the Zoom meeting. On the bottom left is your mute and video, so you can keep yourself muted and off video if you'd like. And while our speaker is talking, you can click the chat button in the bottom middle if you want to put some questions in there. We'll do Q&A at the end of his presentation. And in the top right of your Zoom window, you'll see a button that says view, and you can change that to full screen or to speaker, or even hide self view. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our president, Jerry Britton.
Thank you, Ariana. Welcome, everyone. There's looks like 27 people here right now. Hopefully, plenty more will straggle in. Again, it's a little unfortunate we're doing Zoom. We hadn't planned that, but we'll be back in person in November, and hopefully for the rest of the year. So I just have one announcement. I think most of you recall that we're in the midst of a discussion about whether to retain the name of Audubon for our chapter because of the various connotations that are antithetical for our goal to be all inclusive, and so we're going to continue along that path. If you recall, sometime in the early spring we had a poll where we asked membership their advice on whether we should retain the name or not. That was kind of an informal poll. But what's going to come up probably at the end of September, shortly after the publication of our next quail article, is an actual vote. It'll be, shall we remove the name Audubon from our organization? Yes or no? And whereas previously there was yes, no, or undecided. So this time we're actually going to do a vote, and depending on the outcome of that, we'll be going forward with further actions. And so I'd like you to please consider this very carefully, and please vote. Regardless of where your position is, I would love it if 100% of our membership voted, because then we would have a full understanding of where people fall on this issue. But according to our bylaws, as long as we get 50 people to vote, then that's good enough. So again, we want everybody to vote on this. It'll be just one question on this poll that's coming out, or this vote. And so we look forward to it, and we'll have more info on it when you get the next issue of the Quail. We'll have a write-up about it. We'll introduce it and reintroduce some of the background information so that everybody has a chance to have an informed opinion, and then to do the vote. And so I guess that's all I wanted to say for now. And again, very nice to see we're up to 29 participants. So I'm sure that number will climb as we continue on the evening. And so I'll give it back to Ariana. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. And then we have another board announcement from Alan Bade.
Hi, yes, I wanted to let Mount Diablo Audubon members know about a couple of events coming up. One is a cleanup hosted by, it's a California Coastal Day cleanup hosted by the Contra Costa Conservation Resource District, which is, by the way, our resource district is fantastic with a lot of the work that they do improving habitat in our area. So there's McNabbey Marsh cleanup on September 10th, which is this Sunday. And on the CCRCD website, There's details about that. I think it's from 9 to 12. Of course, we do field trips there, and we repaired nesting platforms there like 2 weeks before COVID started. We had a crew down there and rebuilt a whole bunch of nesting platforms. So that's one. And then they're having like one every weekend through September. So if you look at ccrcd.org website, you can find any of their events. The other event coming up is we're going to do a massive cleanup on September 23rd on Ellenwood Creek in Pleasant Hill, which is part of the old Walnut Creek before it got diverted down by First Drop and Willow Pass Road and stuff. So that's September 23rd. We had about, I don't know, 35 people the last time, and it's pretty successful. Then on October 26th, which is a Thursday, there is the Contra Costa, Contra Costa Watershed Symposium. This is once every 4 years, and Mount Diablo Audubon is helping to sponsor this. It's an event that gathers nonprofits, state agencies, East Bay Regional Park District, lots of other local agencies together for a day-long look at our watershed. One of our county supervisors, Ken Carlson, will give opening remarks. It's an all-day event. There's tabling associated with it, and then speakers, and they'll kind of bounce back and forth between mingling at the tables and talking to each other. And then with speakers, there's lunch served and things like that. We could use some help with tabling. I already have a few volunteers, and Mount Diablo Audubon will help support the tickets. The tickets are $40 until September 26th, and then they go up by $5 after that. It's kind of an, it costs a pretty penny to put an event like this on. So it's at the Pleasant Hill Community Center starting at 9:30 on August 26th. And if anybody wants to help us with tabling, we will help you with your tickets. So look at the last quail. You know how to get a hold of me. Thanks.
Thanks, Alan. So with that, we are going to move on to our main program. So Bruce Willis, before retirement, was an award-winning crime reporter for several California daily newspapers, including Contra Costa Times. After retirement, he wrote his first novel, and then 3 years later, he's the author of the Kim Jansen Detective Series. The debut novel was Bloody Paws, The Plight of the Homeless Human Strays, winner of a Maxy Award for Best Mystery Novel of 2021. And the second book in the series was Bloody Pages, Haunted by a Family Secret, that came out last year. And book 3 is the one he'll be talking to us about tonight, Bloody Feathers, Death of the Cardinal, which focuses on exotic bird poaching and rare bird species preservation. And he's working on his 4th novel, Bless Me, Father, for You Have Sinned. So please join me in welcoming Bruce.
Well, thank you. And I should note that I'm a member of Mount Diablo Audubon and Portland Audubon and Mendocino Coast Audubon. These are all the places that I've lived, and so I continue to support them, as well as National Audubon. And I'm going to share my screen now, and I have to tell you up front that I was telling Ariana that I was really excited to be asked several months ago to participate. And I said, she says it's gonna be 50 minutes. And I said, great, that's, and then as time gets closer, you go, I have a 50-minute presentation to prepare for this group, and I better get busy. And so I've been working on it. And I was telling Ariana that this is my first Zoom presentation. I've been to a lot of Zoom meetings, but not actually as a speaker. And originally it was going to be in person, but that's okay too. So anyway, I'm going to share my screen because that is going to help me, let's see, get through and give you a good presentation tonight. Anyway, this is my, as Ariana said, this is my third book. And I picked bloody in all the titles, not because the books are bloody, but because there are actually clues in the books and it's memorable. But I actually have decided to change all my book covers and change the names because I think that it makes people nervous. Something about, they think that animals are getting killed or hurt or whatever, or people are getting killed. And so anytime you say that something is bloody, a lot of people, I don't want something bloody, And I think especially after the pandemic, they just want to read nice stories. So tonight's topic, we're going to be, talking about my book, but I'm going to talk about birding, the theft of exotic birds, and James Audubon's Birds of America, which is really where I started with this novel. What goes into creating a novel? We already mentioned that Bloody Feathers is my third book. And I think at the end, you're going to see how it all fits together. And I'll try not to just read the slides, but, one of the things I thought I'd do is tell you a little bit about me. Ariana mentioned I was a crime reporter for 7 years, and I worked at the Contra Costa Times. And people ask me how I learned to write. Well, and I learned by writing, and you can see that I've written a lot of stories as a news reporter, like probably over 5,000 stories. And then I had owned a public relations agency. It was based in Lafayette for 25 years. And we took care of client blogs and social media and that sort of thing, and probably wrote at least 1,000 or more blog posts. So in preparing for tonight, I thought, well, this book came to mind, and I'm sure a lot of you have read this. It's not a bird book, but it starts out about a young boy who's sitting around in his living room, and he's got bird books scattered all around him, and he's just got tears coming down. And his sister comes over and says, well, what's wrong, Jimmy? And he says, well, I've got this bird report. It's due tomorrow. And she goes, oh, well, that's unbelievable. She says, but he says, I don't know how I'm going to do it. And he says, well, sweetheart, just take it bird by bird, one bird at a time. So I always thought that was great. It's a good philosophy for life, and also in how I put this presentation together. So I started probably 4 years ago thinking about writing a novel, and I created a bucket list. And basically I had this big thick book with probably 100 pages in it, and I put 4 items on it. And second was write a novel, and then publish a family genealogy, and then fourth, kick the bucket. I don't know, people don't seem to think that's too funny, but I've revised that one downward and put a couple new things in it. But you can see Bloody Paws and both the Tales of Lewis Pioneers, those were books that I created during the pandemic. So I still haven't toured Prince Edward Island, but that's something that I'll do in the future. So, okay, so creating my novel, first novel, it's a long process. And Bloody Paws, for example, I did a publication was 12 years. So somebody might say to me, well, 12 years, why did it take so long? Well, that's easy. I didn't really start writing it for 10, and that's because I was working full time. And writing novels is something that came to me after retirement. So one of the things that, and I was living up at Mendocino when I got the idea for this story, and I was a member of the Rotary Club, and the head of the local Humane Society, who was a Rotarian, he asked me if I could help promote their thrift store to bring more money in for the Humane Society. And I said, well, sure, it'd be a pro bono assignment. And I was excited about that. So I went down to the Humane Society and I toured the facility and met everybody. And then afterwards, I was down at Safeway and I saw this homeless guy eating out of a trash can and, emptying bits of food and drinks out of the trash. And it just struck me, it's kind of not a particularly nice thought, but it's like he was a stray. He was like a stray dog, living on the street, and sadly, had very few resources. And so that idea of the homeless person being a stray was kind of the thread that started me thinking about writing my first novel. So a little bit more about me. One of the things that people have said to me is, well, you retired at 65 and, isn't that the time to sort of take it easy? And do you really have time to start writing novels and, taking on a career like that? And I said, well, sure, why not? And I think what helps me is that as a writer, I have the ability to write anywhere, anytime, regardless what's going on around me. I could go down to Starbucks and have people just, all around me talking and everything. And I can sit down on my laptop and just write, or I can be on a bus and I can write. I can be anywhere. I can even here at the house, I have to, if I'm doing the wash, I can write 5 paragraphs and go out, put the wash in the dryer, come back and keep writing. So I don't need to churn out a bunch of words every day or have a specific time. It does help with your focus a little bit though. So in effect, I wrote most of this, the first book, just enjoyed myself taking long walks and thinking about the character and, having my coffee, having a scone, and then did that a couple of times a week. I pitched about 50 agents before a friend of mine told me about his publisher, and I went ahead and submitted my manuscript, and I was pretty excited about that because that's, getting a publisher is something that's really can be very difficult and discouraging for writers. In fact, I suspect there's a lot of people in the club here that are writers and they've been through this, so they'll know what I'm talking about. So I submitted it and I waited for 2 or 3 months and I didn't hear anything back. And then finally, I get this email from the publisher, and he says, well, if you want your book published next year, you better sign your contract. And I was so excited, I couldn't believe it. It turns out the contract email had landed in spam and had been sitting there for a couple of months. I guess I was cleaning out spam when I discovered that the book was there. So then once I got started, this becomes infectious. You start meeting people, you start joining clubs. Like I'm a member of the California Writers Club and Willamette Writers Club. And pretty soon you just can't help yourself. You're writing, more novels. So I published 3 novels in 14 months. And here are the covers of the 3 books. They're all crime thrillers. And Bloody Paws, as you can see, I have 142 ratings on Amazon, and they, 4.2 out of 5, which is pretty good. I would say the story is kind of an average story. It's not a great story, but 4.2 out of 5 is pretty decent. And one of the things that's great is you get a chance to talk to groups like this. And I've had 2 presentations at the Walnut Creek Barnes and Noble this year, one on Super Bowl Sunday, which wasn't great, but I had another one in May to talk about bloody feathers. And it's so great because people, your table's right at the front door, and people come in and talk to you about your books. And, you know, some people buy books, and, you know, which is great. And Barnes and Noble handles it for you. So that's really a, you know, a plus. So here are my two new novels that are coming out. Angel of Mercy. This is going to be a prequel to my first novel, and I'm actually going to, and I'll talk about this a little bit more, but this will be, Angel of Mercy is going to be book 1, and Bless Me Father, For You Have Sinned is going to be book 5. And Angel of Mercy, I just finished it, and it's getting ready for publication. And Bless Me Father, I'm just a few paragraphs, well, more than that, maybe 3 chapters into that book. But I had a graphic designer create the cover just as an inspiration, you know, to keep me going. And, you know, I was talking about the writing process, and Bloody Pages, book 2, it took me about 90 days altogether to write. And I outlined the chapters on 1 page, and then I kind of blasted through it. And Bloody Feathers took a little bit longer, but, you know, like I said, who's counting? So let's talk birds now. Anybody know Noah Stryker? I can't see everybody's pictures out there, but I assume that you've heard of Noah. In 2015, he set the record for the worldwide big year of birding and recorded over 6,000 birds. Half the world's birds, he recorded half the world's birds and became the first one to do that in a year. And, you know, a pretty amazing guy. And I sent my book to him, and he read it, and he seemed to really like it. And he said that, you know, it's something I should share with the group. I noted down below that the very next year, his record was broken. I don't know how people do that. I guess you need a lot of money and time, obviously. So Noah just returned from the Canadian Arctic and this last week and got it back. He was catching up on emails, and here was his comment. Oh, you're talking to an Audubon group. He said, that's cool. He was giving me advice on how to structure the talk and all that. And the guy is just, you know, he was in the Arctic doing Antarctica in the wintertime doing tours. And so it's great having any kind of email from him. He's a great guy. Okay, so let's do a little birding first, because I don't want this to be all about my books. So let's start in Mendocino. I know that a lot of you have been to Mendocino. It's a beautiful place. And my wife and I moved up there and lived there for 15 years. We moved there in 2000 and lived there till 2015. And it's the kind of place where you can hot tub under the Milky Way with, honestly, you can hear big waves crashing at night and the sea lions barking in the cove. And it's an amazing place, and it's a great place to see birds. And in fact, I didn't realize how many birding pictures that I had from Mendocino until I started thinking about this presentation. So as I said, I'm a storyteller. So here's 3 stories. This is Big River Beach. This is a place that I call my church. It is an amazing place, and I can't tell you how many times that I got up in the morning and went down and worked out on this beach, and how many evenings I've walked on the beach and at sunset. It's right down below Mendocino Village, and this is one of my pictures. And one day I was on the beach, and there was this big dog racing down the beach, and I noticed that about 6 feet above his head was a bird, and it was just a little bit ahead of him. And so the bird's like, he seems to be like following the bird, and he gets down to where you can see this these rocks jutting out. And then the bird turns around and the dog turns around. And they do this for, I don't know how long, but I'm going to guess that bird walked that dog for about 7 different loops back and forth on the beach. I'd never seen anything like it. It was just, it was an amazing thing. I don't know what was going on in that bird's brain, but they both seem to be having a lot of fun. Another time, I was sitting up at the Bayview Cafe, looking over Mendocino Bay. It was a Friday. Always loved to go in there and have clam chowder. And this happened to be a beautiful, clear day. And the doors were all open, and it was probably 70 degrees. And a bird flies in. And the bird, the poor bird, is just a small bird. I think it was a house wren or something, and a wren. And it's banging against the walls, and it ends up over at the window, and it's fluttering around, and people don't know what to do. And so I looked over there, and I got up and I walked over to the window, and I put my hands around its wings so it didn't hurt itself. And I took it outside and opened my hands and just let it take off. And the people in the restaurant just cheered. It was like an amazing experience. And it seemed like just a natural thing for me to do that. The other story that I remember as, I was putting this presentation together was the osprey and the ravens. One day I was on another section of this beach. It's just up here to the left of the picture. And there's this osprey who's got a fish in his claws. And he's coming from the river. And all of a sudden, there's these 2 ravens that are dive bombing him, trying to get him, obviously, to drop the fish. And so they spun around and they flew around. The osprey flew around a few times, and the raven kept going at him. And then eventually he ended up in the forest, because the forest comes right down to the ocean there, which is also kind of an amazing thing about Mendocino. Here's a picture that really stood out to me. It actually is a picture out my front window of my house in Mendocino when I lived in Casper South subdivision. I mean, it's so unexpected to see deer, first of all, down at the ocean, and secondly, to see deer and pelicans together. So that's just, that much more evidence of what a interesting, crazy place where you see a amazing interaction between birds and other wildlife. Just walking along one day, I think along the beach, and looking up and seeing what looks like kind of a teddy bear, and seeing this line of birds. And it was happening very fast. So and I'm taking these pictures with my iPhone. So I just raised it up and snapped the shot. I don't think I really paid much attention to it till later, but birds make it so interesting. And then here's the rocks at Mendocino Village. I'll tell you, the rocks off the village. This is one of the places the local Mendocino Coast Audubon Society does their bird counts at every year. And, it's just one more great view and evidence of the birding there. Here's a little little gull down here looking out at this, raucous ocean. And I called this one High and Dry. Again, this is such an oddball picture. You got this giant flicker and this other little guy down here, and they just seem to be getting along just fine. It's just staying on each other's side of the bird feeder. And our fence around just near the feeder, we got red-tailed hawks, every kind of bird that you can imagine. it is mainly, we mainly set up the bird feeders so that we could attract the small birds. But you know, these flickers have such long, sharp, tiny beaks are able to get in and get the seed. And this one was a frequent visitor. 10 Mile Beach. Again, what makes it so interesting, I think, is the birds. Mendocino Bay, down by Big River Beach. This is in the village. This is a pond, and these geese did not like anybody coming near them, and they were sort of warding us away. I thought it was kind of a cute picture. This guy, this is when we lived in Portland, Oregon. He was obviously very interested in getting down and looking at my camera, and another birding paradise. And this is taken just a month ago down in Dana Point, near the state beach. It was also, I had another interesting picture where you see the birds together with the squirrels all hanging around together. And this, I want to show this. Hopefully I'll be able to show this video, but this is a video taken at Goat Rock a couple of weeks ago down at Sonoma Coast State Beach. And the pelicans are feeding on the fish that are coming here at the entrance to the entrance to the Russian River. So I'll let you take a quick look at this. It's a pretty amazing event. I don't know if this is a seasonal thing, but it just kind of blew me away. I thought that everybody would enjoy that. And then this weekend, in fact, I just got back today from Point Reyes National Seashore. This is a picture of Kehoe Beach, which is down, I think it's Point Pierce Road or something, on Point Reyes Seashore. And to the entrance, we looked up and there were two great horned owls. There were actually this one, and then somebody pointed out another one later on, and he was just up in this tree, just tucked in there. You could barely see him. I took a picture of him, but I couldn't, it was just too dark to show the actual picture, so I picked one off the internet. And this is one of my favorites. This is the Point Cabrillo Lighthouse, and I'm actually a light keeper here. I'm a member of the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary, and my home was on the other side of the lighthouse, a few hundred yards away. And this is a 300-acre nature preserve with 50-foot high cliffs. And it was such a great adventure to walk along here. And some days you'd see lines of pelicans flying right at your eye level, flying along the cliffs as you're walking along. And here's a picture I took on a stormy day. And the head of the State Tourism Board at the time asked me if it was okay to print the picture and put it up on the wall, because she said this is the iconic California photo. Again, I think it's the birds flying in the wind that make this so interesting. And finally, another interesting thing is, and maybe some of you know this, but this is in Portland. This is in Northwest. And this is a picture of elementary school. that was about 6 or 8 blocks from my house. And every September, the Swifts come back. They're called, well, Vox is Swift. John Vox, he pronounces it Vox. Swifts return, and this is part of their let's see, let me remind myself about this. This is the largest known colony in the world, and they've been roosting in the school furnace chimney since 1982. And they come back every fall, and they form this huge swirl. It looks like a tornado, and they swirl around, and then they just drop down into the chimney. And you can see the number of people in the neighborhood that come out to see this event. It's just unbelievable. And they drop in there till just before the last little bit of the sun goes down, the last bird drops in there. And one of the things that the school did was they realized that how important this was to the survival of the birds. So when the birds were migrating, they actually turned the chimney off, and the kids were kind of chilly there for, I don't know, about a couple of weeks every year. And then finally, they put natural gas in the school so that this would be a protected space for the birds forever. So this is no longer used for heating, but it's just a habitat for the swifts. You can see in both these pictures how many people come out for this. Just an amazing event. I had video of it, but I couldn't find it. So anyway, let's do some book talk now, because that's what I was really asked to talk about tonight. It's a pretty complicated job writing a novel. There's a lot of pieces and parts to it. And Bloody Feathers started with an idea. And I have to tell you that I was a volunteer at the Portland Central Library. I helped on Sundays for a couple hours. I helped people with their technology. And, people that are homeless people, and, with little flip phones, and, people that had laptops and whatever would come there for, during the period, and I'd help them out. And kind of as a thank you for that, the curator of the library's rare book room invited us in to the rare book room, which is just a couple floors up. And mind you, this is a public library, and they have a copy of Birds of America. And so here is actually a picture. The woman in blue on the right is my wife, Jerry. And the curator is showing us some incredibly rare books, Bibles and early, Dickens and unbelievable kinds of things. Whoops, Siri started talking to me. That are locked up. And if you see the man in the bald head, just above him is a tan cabinet. And inside that big cabinet is a vault. And it is a massive steel vault. And that's where they keep the 4 volumes of the Birds of America. And I actually have been to a couple of these events where they show you and let you get up and you can actually, touch the book. And I don't know if you noticed that he doesn't wear gloves, because they found that if you wear gloves and you're handling these books, it's easy to tear pages. In fact, Smithsonian and a bunch of museums no longer require their curators and stuff and people that are borrowing the books to actually, you're supposed to wash your hands so you don't get a bunch of oil, but you no longer have to wear gloves. So this was where I saw this book and I thought, wow, that is absolutely amazing. And so then I had the crux of an idea. It's okay. So And so I'd already written my first novel, and I have a bunch of characters. I'm going to use the detective and a couple of other characters in the same book. And I thought, okay, well, why not build a crime thriller around the theft of the book? Well, okay, why would you steal it? Well, it's worth $12 million. And the question that I asked myself, would you kill to get a copy? Well, I'm going to read the opening scene to you. And because one of the things you try to do when you write a novel is you try to grab people from the very first page. But there's one other thing that I did in this book is in the foreword. And writers don't usually do this. They don't give away too much information about their books or their characters. But I listed my characters and I talked about their motivations. And I said, the best crime thrillers never reveal too much too soon. It's a sacred pact between author and reader. But wouldn't you like to know what motivates the characters you're going to be living with for hours or days of your life? Would you be more likely to read a mystery if you knew the main characters' lives were guided by the same inner forces and conflicts that get you out of bed in the morning or keep you awake at night? I think you would, so here goes. So I list the characters and what their motivations are. And then I move into chapter 1. And I think why I always know the openings of every book and the end of every book before I start writing. And I learned that from feature writing at newspapers, because you always knew when you did a feature, you always knew what the beginning and end was, and so that you kind of filled in the middle. That's kind of the way you work on a novel. When all the other novelists that I know, and I've met an awful lot since I started doing this, is they say the middle is obviously is one of the toughest parts to write. So here's the beginning of my book. They held tight to the rickety. By the way, it's called The Accomplice. They held tight to the rickety railing as they descended the wood staircase into the basement of McQuillan's books. Decades of damp air and moldy paper records dating to the store's 1938 opening pressed down on them. When they reached the bottom, they stopped to let their eyes adjust to the dimly lit space. "Over here," said a cheerful Mark Stanfield, lunging toward a man-sized steel safe in a dusty corner filled with cobwebs. He was like a kid on a beach discovering a pretend pirate chest. In the safe was John James Audubon's Birds of America, 4 volumes of life-size paintings of over 1,000 birds, many extinct. Their value, $12 million. The holy grail of 50 million American birders, and among the 10 most expensive books in the world. So you can see there, I'm trying to set up why anybody would steal it and what the value is and all of that. "I really appreciate your understanding," said Stanfield, former curator of the Portland Central Library's rare book room. "I know I'm reneging on the deal to sell Audubon's paintings, but the idea of the rarest of rare books going to a millionaire's private collection is just too much. So I'll admit to the theft." He was babbling. "I'll say it was my idea. I'll go to jail. Then I'll try to make up for it with my family when I'm released." His accomplice says, "Are you going to return the buyer's $100,000 down payment?" "I can't," said Stanfield. "I spent the money, some for expenses and the rest to support my wife and daughter." His accomplice said nothing, nodding somberly as if understanding. Stanfield walked to the safe, turned on his cell phone flashlight, and began dialing the combination. After a half dozen turns, the whirring of the retracting, locking pins was smothered by the basement's moistness. Finally, he opened the door. The safe was empty. "Oh my God," said Stanfield, "where are the books?" Suddenly angry, his accomplice yelled, What the hell did you do with them? Stanfield looked back into the safe as if they might magically reappear. When he turned around, an 18-shot American Ruger pistol was pressed to his forehead. Enough for one kill shot and a lot more. Get in the safe, the accomplice said. I don't understand, said Stanfield, his face a mask of bewilderment. You can step into the safe or I'll shoot you and drag your body into the safe. Do as I say and do it now. What do you mean? Said Stanfield. Why are you pointing that gun at me? You want to return the books to the library, so you took them. No, I have no idea what happened to them. I'm as surprised as you are. I don't believe you, the accomplice said. And I'm telling you one more time to back up and step into the safe. Don't do this, Stanfield pleaded, tears streaming down his cheeks. I'm going to close and lock the door, and I'm going to come back in an hour, the accomplice said. That should be plenty of time for you to think about your family and the possibility of never seeing them again. Then, hopefully, you will have changed your mind about returning the books. I'll die in there, said Stanfield, his voice a squeak. The fear in your voice tells me that I might convince you that there's no going back on our deal. A deal is a deal. Before I close the door, I'm giving you one last chance to change your mind. Stanfield began sobbing. I took the books to save my family and my marriage. You know that. You've got to understand that giving them back is the right thing to do. It's never going to happen, the accomplice said, shoving Stanfield into the safe, his head smacking the back wall. With a twist of the door handle and the spin of the dial, locking pins slid into place, creating an airtight seal. No one would hear Stanfield's screams or whimpers as he slowly suffocated, hopeful he would be rescued at the last moment. So that's the way that you set up the murder and get this crime thriller moving, is create some kind of a dynamic first chapter. And then you've got to, so you do that, and then you start adding in some other elements that you need, like a character has to have a motive, okay? Well, Jed Miller is a millionaire who wants to be the world's #1 birder. And in the book, I actually have him competing with Noah Stricker in the big year to see if he can win the big year competition in 2015. And of course, Jed is fictional and Noah is a real person. And Noah got a real kick out of that. He thought it was great. So anyway, these tell you a little bit about the motivations that I had to create as part of the story. So, Death of the Cardinal, which is the storyline to my book, and you've seen the book. It's a little hard to show it up here because this is because of my background, but it says Bloody Feathers, Death of the Cardinal, and basically you have the story idea, and then you have to start building the elements. And the shooting of a cardinal is what drives everything in this novel. And so I'm going to read just a little bit of this to further set this up, and then I'm going to move on. But so this young man goes back to see his aunt back in the South, and he's from Southern California, and he gets a BB gun. And his aunt tells him, don't point it at anybody. And he spends the whole day, shooting in her backyard at inanimate things. And then he comes back to her front yard, and he looks up into this big tree, and this cardinal comes into view, and then it disappears, and it's hopping from branch to branch, hiding momentarily in the foliage, and then coming into plain sight 15 feet away. The bird's body faced forward, its chest a glowing red beacon. The boy was thinking, was this a challenge? Unsure if the cardinal was a target that his aunt would approve, Jed cocked the rifle, aimed, and waited. The cardinal didn't move. Instead, the bird continued to look at him, his head turning this way and that. Jed was well within the gun's 30-foot range. Even if he hit the bird, it would be hard to miss this close. Would it shake off a .177 caliber bullet the size of a peppercorn and continued its carefree day? The cardinal moved to a higher branch, hopped from limb to limb, then settled back in Jed's gun sight. Should he fire? What would be the fun of shooting, maybe killing, one of the most beautiful animals he had ever seen? Jed loosened and removed his aching raw finger from the trigger. Then he lowered the gun. The cardinal was defiant, challenging Jed, daring him to fire. Again, Jed raised the gun and aimed. His finger jerked. He wasn't sure if it was an accident or if he wanted to make the shot and get it over with. Traveling 350 feet a second, the BB hit the bird in the chest, the feathers and skin, no armor against the tiny metal pellet. It wobbled on the branch. Jed looked closer to see if he had hit the cardinal or if it was doing a little dance, taunting him. Wings out, the bird spiraled to the ground. It stood for a moment and then fell over. A wave of remorse washed over Jed. He dropped the gun and rushed to the bird. It was lying on its side, one eye winking weakly. He picked it up and felt the wetness coming from its feathers. A smear of blood covered his fingers. Finally, the bird's eye closed and the warm body went limp in Jed's hands. Panicked and excited at the rush the shot gave him, he took the bird to the shed in the backyard. There he found a paring knife and cut through the bird's chest to probe for the BB. He desperately wanted to patch the wound and bring it back to life. There was no beat, no life. Jed was a killer, and there would be no resurrection. Tears flowed. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to kill you. You shouldn't have dared me." In that moment of regret, sobbing and wiping his nose, he held the bird loosely in his hands and remembered something his mother had said when his father died. She reached into the coffin, touched Dad's chest, and said, "My heart to your heart. The heart and soul are one. Today we are one." Jed put his hand on the cardinal's chest and repeated his mother's chant. So that story, people ask you a lot as an author, well, how much of you is in the story? And I would say a lot of every author is in the story. As you're trying to develop the story and the characters and everything, you dig in your background, but also things just pop into your head. And as I was trying to develop the motivations and the background, do the backstory on this thing, I remembered that story from when I was 14. And I went back to visit my great aunt for the summer in Tennessee. And I was this little kid from Southern California, and there was just everything was so strange and different for me. And and I had the BB gun and saw the cardinal, and I shot it. And I just, it's like, oh my God, I couldn't believe that I did it. And my little aunt, who had 9 children, a little Dayton, Tennessee, little hillbilly lady with 9 children. She had her first when she was 14. She came out the door and she snatched that BB gun away from me, and she punished me for a month, making me work in her snake-infested, weedy front yard in the hot summer as penance. And I don't think I ever got that BB gun back, if I recall. But it's a real story that got woven into this novel and created all the things that would follow. So because he was unable to repair the bird's heart, he decides he's going to be a surgeon so he can repair hearts and save the lives as his penance. I don't know, some people might think that's far-fetched, but when something is so has so much impact on you as a kid, as a teenager, it could influence you and what you did. He's fixated then, of course, on red birds. He was, you know, it just tore a spot in his soul. So he's fixated on red birds, and he marries a redhead. And on occasions, if you want to get a little crazy, he and his wife dress in bird costumes. Of course, he's in a cardinal mask, and he pretends to shoot her with his BB gun, and she falls onto the bed. And then they have this, they're both turned on by this ritual, and they make passionate love. So everything turns out then, it unfolds, and everything turns out to be about the Cardinal. And so I have him logging on to the dark web as Cardinal 14. He and his wife set up a foundation. It's made up of 14 millionaire fellow birders. They call themselves the Red Flock. They pay money to belong to this group. And they will pay anything that they have to get rare birds for their aviaries, their private area aviaries. And so I said, well, what kind of birds could they possibly want? And what kind of red birds would be so rare that millionaires would have to have, because, you know, they've traveled every place in the world, and they've been on every kind of birding trip, and they've gotten everything else. And so the two that I came up with is the cherry-throated tanager, which is called a stab tanager. It's in Portuguese, it's called a stab tanager because of the red on its throat. I'm going to show you a picture in a minute. And the orange-bellied parrot, okay, it's not red, but okay, I'm the author, so I get to use it. So here's the cherry-throated stab tanager. And I actually thought about calling my book Theft of the Stab Tanager, because I love this bird, and I thought that it would really grab people's attention. But there's only, like, you know, actually there's, yeah, about maybe, I think I've read different figures, but there's probably only 30 of these birds left in existence. And it just is just mind-blowing. And then here's another one. There's 50 of these species left in the wild in Australia, and it's on the red list as critically endangered. And my group of wealthy birders, they only want and pay for birds that are on the endangered species list. You know, how evil is that? So about my book, Ginny Rorby, past president of Audubon Society, called it a spellbinding read, and said, you know, it really talks about the tragedy of trade in exotic birds. And one of the things as an author, people ask you, like, well, what's the theme? What's your book about? And at its heart, it really is about the trade in exotic birds. And then I built a story around it. And then, you know, you can see from these figures that global illegal wildlife trade generates a huge amount of money for people in these criminal enterprises. And 1 out of every 4 in mammal species is, you know, caught up in this trade. So it's huge. And of course, parrots are a huge victim of these activities. And one, as you can see, people shipped like 12,000 baby birds to Sao Paulo in boxes packed without water ventilation. So it's a terrible, terrible thing, very heartbreaking. So I can see that, Ariana, what's my time like? Can you tell?
It's 8 o'clock now.
So it's pretty much at the end?
Yeah, I mean, are you close to how many
Well,
slides?
I'll tell you what, I'm going to skip down. Yeah, I have some slides. they have to do with Audubon. And I know that a lot of you have talked about Audubon and who he was and when he lived, and the fact that he lived in he's born in 1785, like, 8 years before George Washington was president. And I'm going to just slip through this. And one interesting about him is that he was just so focused on his art, and so much so that he couldn't actually, he was never satisfied with what he did. And every year every summer he burned his failed art drawings. And he killed a lot of birds so that he could wire them up and put them in natural poses so that he could paint them. And from Tree Hugger magazine, he shot and killed every bird he painted. I'm going to make this very quick for you. He was born in the French colony, which is now Haiti. Didn't learn English, so he basically wanted to escape the Napoleonic Wars. First person to ban the legs of birds in North America. These are the things that he became known for. Interesting guy, totally focused on this. He's not the founder of Audubon. You all know that, named in his honor. But I used him and his book and some of my own stories and some of the characters from previous books to build this novel. And I'm going to kind of skip forward here because I've talked about a lot of these things already, about what went into the characters and who they are, and how that shooting when he was 14 affected his whole life, and all the key elements of the novel. And because I want to leave some time. But anyway, so when you add it all up, all the things that I've told you, this is the blurb on the back of the book. A murder and the theft of one of the world's most valuable books, John James Audubon's $12 million Birds of America's portfolio, from the public library, send Portland homicide detectives and FBI on a perilous hunt for the leaders of the global exotic bird poaching ring. The suspect list includes a collective of wealthy birders, a heart surgeon with a passion for red birds and red-headed women, a jealous artist, an ex-army sniper, and the daughter of a dying rare bookseller. 3 cases, a half dozen suspects, and time running out to prevent another murder. So this is what you try to do: is you add it all up, and hopefully you come out with a novel that people want to read. So anyway, newsflash quickly, I bought out all my contracts with Black Rose Writing, and I'm reissuing all my books as second editions with new names and covers. Bloody Feathers, and it's because I want to get blood out of my titles, and also I'm expanding the line of books. So Bloody Feathers may be called The Red Flock, or Theft of the Stabbed Tanager, or something else. I really haven't decided. Now, I wanted to just alert people, don't forget my offer. It was in the newsletter. So buy the ebook for $2.99. Normally it's like $4.99, and $1 goes back to the club. And basically the way it works is, Amazon gets $1, I get $1, and the club gets $1 at that price. So it's just a chance to maybe kick in some money for some kind of a club project. I also, I don't know how many writers are in the room, and you can ask me questions about that when I end this and just be another second. But if anybody wants resources or wants help with writing, I'll be happy to help them. And finally, some questions that I posed, but I'm going to stop here and open it up for questions.
Great, thanks. Let's see. I don't see any questions in the chat.
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions for Bruce? Oh, we can have your questions that you had prepared. Or Hugh, do you have a question?
Well,
on video?
no, you don't have any? No.
Oh, sorry. Are you trying to ask a question, Hugh?
Yeah, Rosita wants to know, does he write in the morning? Does he write in the evening? I know you also said that you can write any place you want.
You know what? I usually don't write in the evening. I don't know why. We usually write in the morning or midday, I guess. A little bit fresher that way. You know, in the evening, I like to sit around, have a glass of wine, relax, and take it easy, and watch a little TV or something, and take a walk. But the one thing is, I visualize every scene before I write it, and then I can write the scenes pretty fast. I'm a really fast writer. And I think that's because of all my newspaper writing, because we were always writing on deadline. And so I think that's the fun thing about it's the writing part is the fun part. It's the endless editing that takes place afterwards before you get from the first draft to actual finished novel to get out the published novel. It's quite a process. It usually goes through, you know, all kinds of editing, rounds of editing and things. So that's the least fun. But to answer your question, pretty much any time except evening. Anything else, my dear?
Oh, he said lots.
Yeah, it doesn't look like anyone else.
Well, I hope you enjoyed I hope you didn't mind mixing up the birding photos and make a little birding, a little book talk. But I figured this is a birding group and bird photos might be good. So
Oh yeah, we do love our bird photos. So thank you.
yeah.
Thank you, Bruce. That was great to hear the process and your inspiration for your stories. And we look
Thank you
forward
so
to
much for
checking
your
out
time. I
those.
appreciate it very much.
Yeah, so that's it for our September meeting, and we'll see you all again on Zoom because our room isn't ready, and also our speaker is not in the area. So we'll be doing another Zoom meeting on Thursday, October 5th. Our speaker is Jessica Griffiths. She's going to talk about why birds flock, and then hopefully we'll be in person some point in 2023 again at the November or December meeting. So thanks, everyone. We'll see you later.
Thank you. Thanks.